My name is Chris Bullock, and I am the host of Conscious Cravings with DJ Krispy Kreme on KSSU, Sac State Student Run Radio.
Hello, my name is Paul Roth, and my vlog series is called Paul Talks.
Hello, my name is Ryan Barnes, and my channel is Rye Guy Barnes.
I think there's an idea that men, at least straight men, have to be strong and hard-hearted so as to be a protector and fighter. I don't know why showing emotion is supposed to indicate men are weaker, nor why emotional hardness is an important thing. All these aspects seem to be a part of a fairly sexist notion of masculinity that men are supposed to follow whether they want to or not.
This goes back to the days of the Bible. Honestly, we're born to be the foundation. We're this stronghold. So for us, we're not allowed to bend. We're not allowed to break. And unfortunately, that's carried on throughout generations and the inability to show emotion.
I feel like up until recently, society had these unwritten rules about men and women, and women were allowed to have emotions and thus be allowed to share them, and men were not allowed to have emotions. They had to be independent, they had to be stoic, they weren't allowed to have problems, they could only have solutions. And so when we take this into modern times, I feel like it's easier for women to share their emotions because it was always expected that women were emotional, and it's harder for men to share their emotions because for a very long time the unwritten rule was men don't have normal human emotions, which is ridiculous.
You know, as an African American, as a minority in general, I think the stigma behind mental illness and why we're afraid to talk about it is very, very strong. And I know for me, I was diagnosed with clinical depression as a teenager, and it's taken years, well over a decade, for me to feel comfortable in my own skin and be able to talk about my own story.
If men are less likely than women to reach out for help for mental illness, I'm not surprised. It's that notion that men aren't supposed to appear weak. Now, I know that asking for help isn't a failing. There are some things that people just can't do for themselves because we all have limits. And yet women are expected to ask for help in all things, and men are told by society that they should be impossibly self-sufficient. And that binary aspect to gender expectations around masculine self-sufficiency is also baloney.
With this idea of being brave, courageous, and independent comes this idea that men should not need help. And if men need help, then they're not real men. So men don't really ask for help when it comes to mental health and mental illness, or at least it's difficult for most men because of this idea that it is a sign of weakness. And of course, this isn't true. Everybody needs help now and then, and that's okay.
Talking to honestly to my family, my grandmother, my mom's mom, does not know that I suffer from clinical depression. It took me until I was 30 to be able to feel comfortable enough to talk to my mom. And that was after getting involved with mental health organizations and talking about it on my own radio show. It's been a long time.
Weirdly enough, even though I was raised to be okay with having emotions, whenever it comes to sharing them with people, I always have a bit of a hard time with it, depending on what the subject is. I share a lot with my close friends. When it comes to intimate relationships, it's a lot harder for me to share sometimes because I'm afraid that the other person is going to see me as lesser, and they're going to either make fun of me or leave me or not accept me for who I really am.
My father was an officer and a gentleman, and he embodied that notion of masculine self-sufficiency, which taught me not to ask for help. But then when I was going through a bout of suicidal depression in high school, he tried to tell me that I could open up to him about anything. And when the high school counselor suggested I go to therapy, he drove me there every week without hesitation and without making me feel weird about it. He basically taught me then that loving me was more important to him than perpetuating the idea that men should just suck it up and deal with their own problems.
Back when I was 18 or 19 years old, my mother had died from cancer, and I was so sure she was going to survive it. A lot of people came up to me and told me that if I needed anything, to let them know. If I needed some time off from school to process this information, let them know. I told them no. I told them that I was fine and that I can deal with it on my own and that I'm okay. I was not okay. I was struggling to keep myself stable, and this was a process that lasted almost a decade. 10 years I struggled with this virtually alone and by myself, by my choice. So struggling with depression and struggling with grief, I talked to some of my friends who also went and saw professional therapists every once in a while, and they encouraged me to go and seek the help that I needed, and that it's not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It is a sign of strength.
For men who are struggling with mental health, the one thing I can say is let your guard down. Don't let your pride or stubbornness be the reason that you don't get help. Now, more than ever in our society, we need men who are comfortable enough to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is strength. It's not a weakness anymore. So if you feel like you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it.
I think we need to see men talking about having mental health issues that they need help to handle. I think we need to see men talking about how getting help for various mental illnesses is a strong and brave thing to do. I think we need to see men understand and support each other when they admit to having mental health issues and getting help.
I don't know if I can say this enough, but there's a lot of strength in being emotionally vulnerable, and I've learned that. And it feels so good to be okay with having normal human emotions and sharing them. Sharing them with your friends and your family and your loved ones. It helps.
If you see people struggling, friends, family, or whatever, reach out. The slightest hint of care from a random stranger could be the difference in somebody's life, whether they wake up the next morning or not. So if you see somebody that needs help, reach out.
The biggest obstacle we have to getting better is thinking that we have to stay this way. Good examples are what we need to break this stigma. Just like we have to provide positive representation to open up the possibilities for young women and people of color, we have to do this too for men dealing with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, addiction, all sorts of mental health issues. We have to see it to be it.